Everybody, we have Del Gines with us. Del Gines is the Chief Innovation Officer of our national level trade council, the International Economic Development Council. And for some of the people in the room, he was your instructor in Economic Development 101. I think 15 Kit Sapiens took that class from Del on November 1st. And he was kind enough to come out here and talk about effective economic development in complex times. He's got 2 books, one's coming out. Give him a round of applause, Del. Thank you very much.
Yeah, navigating the storm. How appropriate of a song is that? It's been great. Joe's been great host. I didn't know I was gonna have to travel by plane, water, and land to get here. But it was actually wonderful. I've never been on a car ferry before. And I've never been on a car ferry that's been was built the same year I was born. So, you know, we had the dolphins in front pulling us across. But we made it. We had a great time yesterday at the Vibe Entrepreneurship Center talking ecosystem building, which is something that's near and dear to my heart. I spent 10 years at the Kansas City Fed discussing that topic, so it was wonderful to just, you know, be able to chat with them. And I'm going to turn on my timer so Joe doesn't get mad at me. So we're going to talk about, you know, navigating the storm, but there's kind of a through line. And I was thinking about, let me get this out the way. I was thinking about the term, you know, one Kitsap. You know, first of all, I didn't know when he first asked me if it was Kitsap or Kit Kat, which is my favorite candy bar, but we did figure that out. But the concept of one, and I think is interesting because one can be interpreted in a variety of ways, right? This isn't in my presentation. I was just thinking about it while I was sitting with the mayors. But, you know, one can be interpreted a variety of ways. As a numerical output, you know, one. It can be interpreted as one in terms of ranking. But I think the one that we want to talk about the most is one in terms of uniformity, consistency, collaboration, unified vision. Because I think to be one, you have to be one if you want to get to number one. And so there's something in that name that I think is profound and something to rally around, particularly in these points of time, where to navigate uncertainty, I've been arguing, especially with some of the trends that we're going to talk about and look at, is the fact that you need to have more people within the network working together to achieve common goals. And we're going to talk through that a little bit because really this is more of a call to action than any kind of really deep intellectual, you know, speech or presentation. It's really designed to kind of get you to think through how you do things within the context of your geographic region and how do you make it better for everyone. Because that's really what we're grappling with. Because I feel like if you can get to those fundamental principles, you can kind of figure it out from there, you know, how we want to move. So let's just talk about it. The field of economic development is changing. And you want a good developer in good times. You want a great developer in tough times. And some of the things that we've been talking about is the critical role of economic developers, because we've seen a rash across the nation, across the states, of people appointing or hiring developers that are from a sector that's not really in economic development. And it's not that a professional, you know, somebody from a corporation can't come in and run an EDO. They absolutely can. I mean, if they're smart, they put the right people around them, knowledge. But there's something to be said about the profession itself. And the profession is important for a variety of reasons. One, especially in the times in which we're in, the concept of navigating through complexity. Now, we just listened to, you know, when we had everybody stand up, people from different boards, people from different municipalities. We had leadership, we have military, we have seafaring, all of these different kind of things. A good developer can help navigate that level of complexity to be able to understand where the policies are, where the people are, and how they fit and work together. And that's a critical and underdeveloped skill in the corporate sector when you're moving into development. We're mostly in the corporate sector, you're designed to maximize shareholder value. First thing my master's finance professor told me. Economic development is a different value proposition. The second is strategic leadership. It's positioning the community to be better tomorrow than what they were today. Or at bare minimum in troubled times, not be worse. Or if it has to be worse, be the less worse possible that it could possibly be, right? Like that's their role. Stakeholder coordination. Economic developers are some of the few people that are tasked every day to wake up and figure out how to move the community more towards a greater quality of life for everyone and the stakeholders that need to be involved in part of that process. Informed advocacy, looking at policies, whether it's at the state level, the federal level. We were talking to the mayors, they were talking about roads. What's happening with the roads? How does that impact development? Small business, big business, what's happening on the military base? All of these things, informed advocacy. And finally, long-term vision with short-term adaptability. So because they're paid to get up every day and think about the health of the community, they get paid to think about the long-term vision and rally people around that, and creating a level of short-term adaptability based upon changing circumstances on the ground. So in short, they are the conductor of the economic development orchestra. Now, how many of you ever went to, see an orchestra and you were going there to see the conductor? I don't know, are there superstar conductors? Oh, you always gotta have one that messes it up. He's like, oh yeah, I'm a fanboy, I got his card. But most people go to hear the music, they go for the experience, and the conductor is there to keep everything running. And I always have a saying, about economic developers, is that when things go astoundingly well, the mayors take credit. And when they go astoundingly bad, they blame the economic developer. So, is that true, Mr. and Mrs. Mayor? But in general, they are the unsung heroes behind a lot of the things that communities do. And a lot of it is because the field is not a professionally, pathway field through, let's say, school and everything. People just tend to fall into economic development. Like, I've never heard a fourth grader when asked, what do you want to do when you grow up? Oh yeah, I want to be economic developer. Never heard that. So what's important? And so this is what we've been seeing and hearing, and I'm sure, and I've even heard it through conversations with you in passing, conversations at the table. The role of the traditional economic developer is changing. It's just changing. They're being brought into conversations now that they've never had to be brought into. Now, there was a time not too long ago where they could say, workforce? Oh, the workforce people get to do workforce, go over and talk to them. Oh, housing? The housing people get to do housing, go over them. Oh, community development? Yeah, go to that nonprofit over there, they can handle that. Not anymore. Like when we were sitting around the table with our economic development research partner members, some of the main things that they struggle with were, Del, we're being pulled into housing conversations and we've never done housing before. We're being pulled into workforce, which has been evolving, and we've never really had to deep dive into that space anymore. We've kind of passed it out. And so when you see some of the trends, and we're doing a big state of the field survey, the first of our kind. I suppose I should stop and tell you what I do, right? Maybe that'll be helpful. So I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for IEDC, the largest professional association of economic developers in the world. And under my purview is research, professional development, our grant-related works, and now our international strategy. And so we spend a lot of time trying to understand what the developers are faced with, what their challenges are. And these are the things that came out of a 400-member qualitative survey that's a pre-survey, actually, to get to our big State of the Field survey that we'll be launching at our annual conference in September. And these are the things that they said they're struggling with. Professional development. They're saying we need more skills to grapple with the challenges of development today. We need to understand how to navigate spaces that we've never been in before, how to deal with customers and clients and different people that are now in the network that we have to help move forward. We need to understand trends and how to meet them. Quality of life and community well-being. Non-traditional measures. No longer can you just say, which has been a traditional saying at economic development boards, this year we produced this many jobs, this much capital investment, and this led to this much in tax increase. You can't say that anymore because people are asking for a lot of different things. And in fact, in many communities, there's almost an anti-growth sentiment that we've been hearing about. We're like, why do you keep pushing us to grow when we are perfectly content with where we're at? Non-traditional metrics. Of course, workforce talent. How many of you heard there's not enough skilled workforce? Raised by show of hands. It's been a big thing going back 15 years. They were predicting it. We did a terrible job of anticipating it, and now we're dealing with the consequences of it. So how do we have an effective workforce development system to drive economic development? Because a lot of companies, especially big companies, are now looking for workforce availability even beyond any kind of incentives that you can bring, because if you can't get the labor, you can't produce the widget, and it doesn't matter how much you give them in land or abatement, they can't get the profit that they're designed to do. And this not only applies to the corporate sector, we've also heard it from growth entrepreneurs as well, because they need workers too. We also have the issue of housing. How many of you heard the issue of housing? I've heard it from both the mayors at the table this morning, that housing is an issue. And it's not just affordable housing. Historically, it was a conversation around affordability. The cost of living is going up, the cost of housing is going up, and it's displacing our people or putting an undue burden on our municipality. Now it's workforce housing. I came from the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City prior to coming to IEDC 2 years ago. And I remember we were talking to one of our rural board members, and he said, you know, we got this great hospital, the best in the region, but we can't recruit doctors because we can't find them houses that are even in the $200,000 and $300,000 range. So we're not just talking about, you know, the needs of those that may have a lower level of income, but we're talking about housing across the spectrum, which is driving demographic shifts, it's driving economic development shifts, it's driving the quality of life shifts in the community. These are what developers are saying that they're facing. And then finally, the big one, the storm, what we're facing today. So I was telling them at the table, we had our leadership conference in DC 2 years ago. Not 2 years ago, I'm sorry, about 2-3 weeks ago. So, yeah, it's the time zone difference. I'll be honest, I struggle coming west. But, yeah, 2 years ago. But a couple weeks ago. So, you know, I leave the house. I live in Omaha, Nebraska, by the way. Go Big Red. So it was negative 20 degrees. The conference is a 3-day conference. So I'm leaving, I'm all bundled up and everything. I'm going to come home that day, 3 days later. And I call my wife and say, how's the weather? Oh, it's 80 degrees out. And I was like, what? She said, yeah. So it went from negative 20 to negative 80. And then last week we had the bliznado. I don't know if anybody follows the weather. We had a bliznado in Nebraska. So we had, you know, high level winds with massive snow. Dumped about 3 to 4 inches in a short period of time. And then it all melted the next day. That's kind of what we're facing today, right? With all the policy shifts day in and day out. We are facing a level of uncertainty that outside of the pandemic and maybe the recession in 2008, we haven't. Nobody's making an argument whether a policy is right or wrong in this particular presentation. But the fact is that we are facing a large degree of uncertainty in rapidly shifting times. And it behooves us to think about how do we do development collectively within this time period. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that. And that leads us to new approaches in economic development. Something that many of you may have sensed, but maybe not put a name to it. But I think when I talk about it, you're probably going to co-sign with me on it. This is the kind of the way development has emerged over the history. This is in my dissertation, the Lit Review. Industrial attractions in the 30s, entrepreneurship, very specific program in the 80s. Over 200 business incubators were created in the 80s across the states, among other things. Porter's cluster theory, more of a holistic, how do we improve the environment so that we're more competitive to major industry? Then ecosystem building, leveraging networks to produce high growth entrepreneurship to create economic transformation. Boom, 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 boom. Now what I'm seeing, and I'm spending a lot more time writing about, is something that I called, and I hope they don't sue me, M&M model of development. Well, because they are delicious. I had 2 packs last night, so you can kind of tell. So multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder. We're now, what economic developers in the field of economic development is grappling with, is how do you get more stakeholders that are around the similar issue together and move them in a meaningful way. Traditional, non-traditional. Before we could sit within our professional clusters of development, chamber, EDO, workforce, or whatever, and just kind of do things and assume that the system would work itself out. No more. And it's not just the integration of those sectors together, it's also those we don't traditionally think about. Who's the closest to the stakeholders in the community? It could be pastors. It could be a nonprofit organization. It could be another critical influencer. It could be a company. Like all of these things now, we're seeing people trying to be pulled in together to move things forward in a meaningful way. And in my writing on M&M, what I talk about is something called double diversity, double diversification. So double diversification is not just ensuring to meet the resiliency demands of your community that you have enough of a diversification of your industrial structure that when something hits one section hard, you can bounce off and develop the other section and kind of have a measure of economic resiliency and maintenance, but also the diversity of the way you do development. Historically, traditional development has been like this, right? Industrial recruitment, business retention. What incentives and things do we have in place to be able to land that deal? Now, it's this. And so when you're dealing with this, and there is a through line in everything that I'm talking about, going back to what developers are saying, when you have something like this, you can't do development like this. You're not just drag racing down a straight line, going as fast as you can. You're trying to navigate the complexities of the environment in which multiple stakeholders are trying to achieve something in a community at the same time. And to do development effectively, you have to figure out how to help people navigate this level of complexity. And in my last 5 minutes, I want to talk about this and then what leads up to this. So one KITSAP. You have to be one to get to number one, right? And I loved every conversation that I've had. I feel like, have you ever watched that, what is that, housing redevelopment? You know, they all have all those reality housing TV shows now, and the one that says, this house has good bones. You know what? Like, when I go into a community like this one, I listen to what people are saying, what they're trying to do, what's the vibe, what's the energy, how are they thinking about things? And you all have such good bones, quote unquote, in this area because people are enthusiastic. There's a sense of collaboration, even if it's nascent in certain areas. There's a desire to move forward and be thoughtful about how do you connect the dots to be number one. And that's the precursor to any kind of new strategic shift for resiliency. And so when I look at something like this is exactly what I'm talking about. If you look at the diversification of these particular sets of objectives, it's not something that the EDO alone and Joe alone can do. It's likely going to take all of you in here, directly or indirectly, working together to drive these objectives. Multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder collaboration. And to do that in a time where you have dramatic policy shifts, right? You don't know what a tariff is going to do. You don't know what type of funding structure is going to change. It's going to force you more than ever to figure out mechanisms by which you need and can work together. You need to double down on your network building, your relationship building, your shared understanding of what each other are facing. So the concept of proactive engagement on your own behalf. We can weather the storm either by being buffeted by it or by still trying to figure out how to move forward during it. So what are your proactive solutions? What are you trying to influence? What are you saying, regardless of the changing landscapes within the economic development environment, I know one thing, we can do this together. We can work on this together. We can set a vision for this together, and we can build this together. One to be one. Align advocacy efforts with clear, measurable economic objectives. So regardless of where, like, after this, I go to a car. I go to the car, they take me to the ferry. They take me across the water, and I get an Uber. The Uber takes me to the airport. They take me to the airport. I get on a Delta flight. They again gave me a half-hour layover in Salt Lake City, so hopefully they're not late, and I can get home tonight, right? I can measure each step of that way. What is it that is most important to you all within this area that you say collectively, we will measure this and we will pursue it regardless of any of the external storm that's facing us? If we don't have something over here, We'll figure out how to get it over here. And then finally, I'm going to close on some practical guidance. There you go. For navigating uncertainty. Emphasize adaptability, collaboration, and transparency versus just the very specific task that your organization or your activities are designed to do. Look at it from a systems lens. Can we be adaptive here? Are we fixed and locked into this particular system? Am I bringing the people around the table when I try to do something, whether it's formally or informally? Short-term responses with a sustained strategic vision. Know where you want to go. I see those vision statements out there. Lock in on them. Let that be the path if there's a consensus general agreement around it. But then know that to get there, you are willing to navigate and be nimble, and people in the network will be nimble as well. Data-driven decisions and continuous stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder engagement, meetings like this, you don't just do one of them and say, we got it done. We hung out one time, we had a couple beers and salmon at lunch, and it's all good. It doesn't work like that. You have to have repeated interactions. In entrepreneurship, we call them collisions, ways to build networks, relationships with new people, new knowledge into the pipeline, and strengthen old relationships. And then finally, clearly communicate, that's my time. Clearly communicate economic impacts to policymakers and stakeholders. Storytelling. Policymakers are looking for a reason to support you. It's very rarely, like I would bet if I asked both of our mayors at the table, are you anti the economic developer? They would say no, because they recognize the critical nature of it. But within a policy environment with competing priorities, your ability to collectively tell your message, and I guarantee you that message is a lot bigger for them if you go in as a coalition or a strong collaboration or a network than just one person saying, hey, look at me, I'm so awesome, give me some more money. Because that's historically how it's been done. And so support your developers, support them, build a bigger table, develop a common vision, and leverage that for short-term advocacy and long-term strategy. That's a very general pathway to be number one by being one. Okay, 1 + 1 = 2. But this is where we're at nowadays. I'm here for you. I'm willing to support you. People, I don't think, take me up on that enough. Like, this is my contact information. If you need me, just ping me, give me a message. But our job is to make the world better for everybody. And I think that's the noble goal of development. It's the noble goal of the profession. And I think together as we grapple through uncertainty, as long as we're willing to do it together, work with each other, and just put that energy as much into the network building and relationships as we do to our daily task. When I come back to Kitsap next time, that it's going to be well on the pathway to where you want it to be. So again, I appreciate you all. Lovely time here. My daughter's moving to Portland, so not too far away, which I'm going to hate, but she loves the beauty as well as me. Thank you, everybody.